What is going on, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS5 news update. So it looks like things are happening very, very quickly in the scene right here. I know I just did an update yesterday. However, it's already happened. There's already more stuff come out already. So first of all, Spectre has updated his exploit to now include support for 4.50. And this was something I had to correct myself on in the last video, where I essentially said that, you know, the WebKit was patched after 4.03. Turns out that's not actually correct. It was just the current implementation of the WebKit only supported 4.03, but now it's been updated by ChendoChap to support 4.50. So now Spectre's updated his exploit to also work on 4.50. So that means you can do the WebKit plus kernel exploit chain on up to 4.50 now, instead of only being up to 4.03. So yeah, if you're on a 4.50 system, you can now test out this exploit yourself as well. So that's a pretty big update. But another big thing that's also happened very recently is we also have a BDJ implementation of the kernel exploit by Slayer's Gorvy. So that is the BDJ, you know, the Blu-ray disc userland exploit chained with the same kernel exploit that Spectre's been using, except Spectre's implementation uses the WebKit to trigger the kernel exploit. Slayer's Gorvy's implementation uses a Blu-ray disc with the BDJ exploit to trigger the kernel exploit. And his method is a bit different. So with the Blu-ray disc, it basically listens for a payload. So just like his implementation on the PS4 on 9.03, where you ran the Blu-ray disc and then you sent a payload over the network to enable stuff like FTP, well, that's now possible on the PS5, because the PS5 does the same thing now. You put the Blu-ray disc in and it will run the exploit, and then it will listen on port 9019 for a payload, and you can send the payload over the network. So those are the big updates right now. We've got a updated, you know, exploit from Spectre that now works on 4.50, and we also have Slayer's Gorvy's implementation using the Blu-ray disc. I think that's only for firmware 4.03 right now. He may release future versions that work on 4.50 and 4.51, because I think he needs to, you know, like update the kernel offsets for the higher firmwares for 4.50 and 4.51. So I think this version just targets 4.03, but I could be wrong about that. So you might as well test it yourself if you're on 4.50 or 4.51. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at how you set this up. So with Slayer's Gorvy's one, you've got the ISO that you download from Slayer's Gorvy, and we do actually have a FTP payload now by Zekoshal that is ported to the PS5. So all you need to do is have a payload to run and the Netcat GUI program or some other payload injector. So all we need to do is put a Blu-ray disc into your computer and then obviously run image burn. And then from here, we're going to write image file to disk. We just drag the ISO file into image burn, and then obviously insert your Blu-ray disc, hopefully a rewritable Blu-ray disc, a BD-RE disc, because then you can rewrite to the disc multiple times. And then we can just hit the write button here and click yes to overwrite, and that will write the exploit onto the disk. Okay, and once it's done, you can then eject the disk and put it in your PS5. And once on the PS5, you just make sure that you're connected to your network, that you have a valid IP address. And then once you're connected to your network and that you're on 4.03 or potentially 4.50 or 4.51, then you should be able to test this out. So we go to media and run the disk player. And then we just get a black screen for a while. If it's working correctly, you should get a black screen for quite a long time. And then you'll periodically get little notifications popping up every now and then. That's usually a good sign. If it goes to a blue screen too early, then that typically means it's failed and you have to reboot and try again. So unfortunately, this version of the exploit has the same instability as Spectre's version. And that's mainly because it's the kernel exploit that has the instability, which unfortunately, obviously both implementations use the same kernel exploit, so they're going to have the same kind of failure rate, because the WebKit exploit's pretty stable, roughly, and obviously the BDJ exploit's very stable, but the actual kernel portion isn't. So yeah, there you go. You can see we've got kernel read-write. So that is it. It's now saying payload server running on port 9019. So all we need to do is inject a payload. Okay, so all we need to do is inject the FTP payload, so we can run Netcat GUI and enter the IP address of the PS5, and the port number is 9019, and then drag in the payload.bin for the FTP server. And then I'm going to click inject. You can see it says done. And a notification does pop up on the PS5 itself showing the IP address and port number to connect to. So then all we need to do is open up a FTP client like FileZilla. And you can see here, if I type in my PS5's IP address, 168.137.192, and the port number 1337, no username or password needed, and we can connect. And boom, there we go. We have full access to the PS5's hard drive right here, I believe. I mean, this does look like the root directory. Don't get me wrong, this is the first time I'm seeing it. But yeah, this definitely looks like the root directory. You've got the user folder, the USB folder, the update folder, just like on PS4. You know, you've got, yeah, MNT folder that's got your disk folder right here. Yep, there we go. There's the Blu-ray disc that's running in there. You've got the sandbox directory. You could technically dump game files now by putting a game in and running it and then dumping the files from the sandbox directory. Obviously, you can't decrypt games because we don't have any kind of decryption. You know, we don't have like we need like a full jailbreak to decrypt games, I believe. I could be wrong actually about that, but yeah, well, even if we could get decrypted games, we couldn't run them without a homebrew enabler type patch, which we don't have. But yeah, you can access the file system. This is the root directory of the PS5 that is accessible now here on the computer. I can't even talk. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, I'll probably do a more in-depth video on this, maybe showing you some of the things that you can do with FTP on your PS5 once I have time to really look into this and see, you know, what kind of things can be manipulated. We'll have a look at that. You could potentially block system updates with the update folder using the same method as PS4 potentially. So we'll have to look into all of that, and I'll give you guys a full tutorial once I've figured out what we can potentially do with this. But yeah, full root access to the PS5 on your computer. I mean, let's just take a file, for example. Let's go to user app. So this is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Yeah, you can see the package files there, just like it would be on PS4. We can copy the XML data out, and that worked. There you go, transfer finished. It copied it out to my computer. So you can transfer files back and forth by the looks of things between your computer and your PS5. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff right there. So that's what we have right now. A huge update basically that's just dropped over the past few hours. Obviously, Spectre's exploit's been updated to support 4.50. You've got Slayer's Gorvy's BDJ exploit that can load payloads, and you have a FTP payload provided by Zekoshell for it that you can use to read and write to your PS5's hard drive. Full access to the root of the hard drive now. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff. Obviously, more videos to come. So hope you guys enjoyed this update or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.